Hi there, my name is Ricky Hemme. I'm the lead pastor of South Valley Community Church in Lemoore, California. And what we're doing is we're putting together some videos that describe what we believe as a church and why we do things the way that we do them. Through these videos, we've talked about orthodoxy, which is right thinking, and now we're talking about orthopraxy, which is right practice. And the topic I want to talk about today is an unfortunate one, but an important one in the church, and it's how to handle conflict. You may have heard these words from Jesus, Matthew 5, verse 9, where he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Now, you may have wondered, why does Jesus emphasize peace? And why in the Sermon on the Mount was that such an important part of his message, that the sons of God are those who make peace? Well, I believe one of the answers to that question is just the reality that we live in a world of conflict. Most of us, it doesn't take us long to realize that there is conflict all around us. There's national conflict and political conflict and local disputes, and conflict isn't always out there. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's right here, even in our church. And what we know is that the world it's starving for peace. We want peace in our marriages, peace with our kids, peace in our church. So, what is a peacemaker? Well, a peacemaker is one who takes responsibility for reconciling broken relationships. That is a peacemaker. You see, peacemakers seek to resolve conflicts and find peaceful solutions. The best way I could describe this is that a peacemaker clears the path. Well, when we are in a conflict, when somebody wrongs us or when we wrong somebody else, there's a hurdle that gets placed between us and the other person. Okay, you wrong a person, you hurt them, and you put up a hurdle. Someone lies to you, and they put up a hurdle. Someone does something that's disrespectful, and then the hurdle is there. And someone does something that's wrong or says something wrong or just does something that bothers you. A hurdle is placed up between you and the other person. And what happens is that over time you look up and there are hurdles in the path between you and people you love. It could be between you and a brother or sister, a spouse or a friend, a coworker, a classmate, a church member, a pastor, somebody in your life. Between you and someone you love, there are hurdles. Well, peacemakers, they see the hurdles and they clear the path. I want to give you 3 essential keys to making peace. Key number 1 is to embrace conflict as an opportunity. Here's the reality. You will see conflict in this life. You will see it. So embrace it as an opportunity. You see, the Bible teaches that we should see conflict neither as an inconvenience nor as an occasion to force our will, but rather as an opportunity to demonstrate the love and the power of Jesus. It's an opportunity to live like Jesus. Jesus says it this way in Matthew 5:39, "I say to you, don't resist the person who is evil, but if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." That's Matthew 5. So how does this play out practically? Well, on the screen, we're going to show you an image that was developed by a lawyer named Ken Sande. We took that image and made it our own, so we added some things and kind of developed our own view of peacemaking. But what you're going to see is Sande, he was a lawyer, and he believed that the church should be an expert at resolving conflict. And he pointed out that there are 3 common ways of dealing with conflict. There's peace faking, which is on the far left, and that's a flight response. There's peace breaking, which is on the far right. That's a fight response. And then there's peacemaking that's on the middle, and that is the Jesus response. And so I want you to imagine this hill is covered with ice. If you go too far to the left, you're going to fall down into peace faking. Go too far to the right, you're going to fall down into peace breaking. So the question is, what are God-glorifying responses to conflict? How do we resolve conflict? Well, number 1, if you want to be a peacemaker, sometimes God is going to call you to overlook an offense. You see, many disputes are so insignificant that they should be resolved quietly and deliberately by overlooking an offense. There are times where I encourage my children to do this very thing. I remember my daughter, my son took my daughter's Tic Tacs. She was all worked up over the Tic Tacs. And I said, "Blake, they're just Tic Tacs. Just let it go." And she did. She listened. Sometimes we let tic tacs bother us when we should really be overlooking the offense. Proverbs 19:11 says, good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. Oftentimes, the path can simply be cleared by overlooking an offense. This doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it wasn't wrong what they did, but you're willing to let it go. Now, if that doesn't work, if it's too big of a deal, then you might need to do step 2, which is to reconcile. If it's a serious offense, and you can't overlook it because it's damaged the relationship, then you may need to resolve it personally by confessing and correcting and asking for forgiveness, or providing a place where you can forgive the other person. Jesus says it this way in Matthew 5:23. If you're offering your gift at the altar, and there you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Jesus says that sometimes, you know what worship looks like? Worship looks like going and getting right with others. You see, sometimes we think that worship is just this, singing songs and praising God. But sometimes God says, hey, I don't want to see your hands lifted up. I want you to go and get right with the person that you are having a conflict with. Because there's a problem that happens when we praise God in church on Sundays and then we lift up our fist to our neighbor in hatred on Mondays. So if you want to be a worshiper, reconcile broken relationships. Get rid of the hurdles that exist between you and someone you care about. Number 3 is get help. You can overlook it, you could reconcile it, but maybe you might need help getting past it. Sometimes you'll need an outside voice or outside assistance in the process of reconciliation. And Jesus describes this process in detail in Matthew 18. This is what he says in verse 15 of Matthew 18. He says, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens, you've gained your brother. So step number 1 is talk directly and discreetly to the person who wronged you. And then hopefully you get past it. If that doesn't work, then you may need assisted peacemaking. So Jesus says this in verse 16. If he does not listen, take 1 or 2 others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. So if you can't do it directly and discreetly, take others with you, those who have seen this offense and can speak into it. If that doesn't work, then you may need to actually bring it to the pastor, to the church, to the elders, to the leadership in your local context. He says if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. So step 3 is you take it to the church. And if a person who professes to be a Christian refuses to be reconciled even when the church is involved, then it shows that there is grave sin and stubbornness and an unwillingness to do things God's way. And that unfortunately gives way to a foothold in someone's life, which is key number 2 to resolving conflict, and that is to refuse to give Satan a foothold. You see, on both sides of the slippery slope are unhealthy responses to conflict. If you choose peace faking or the flight response, then one unhealthy thing you'll do is you'll deny the conflict, act like it doesn't exist. And that gives temporary relief, but it doesn't fix it. Or you might avoid the conflict by running from it. That means, I'm just going to switch churches. I'm just going to end the friendship. I'm going to quit the job. I'm going to file for divorce. I'm going to run away. That doesn't solve the conflict. It just prolongs and postpones the problem. On the other side of the slope are attack responses. And in one way you might attack is by gossiping. I'm mad at this person, so I'm going to tear them down, tear their reputation down by verbally attacking them behind their back. The other way we do this, attacking, is by violence, which is another attack response. We attack them with our words, or we attack them even with our fists. We see that sometimes this could lead to assault and violence. And in extreme cases, the law might have to get involved. There is a consequence that we pay when we don't do peacemaking God's way. We can run from it, or we can fight. Or we could do the Jesus way, which is making peace. My encouragement to you is key number 3, commit to making peace. If you want to glorify God in the midst of your conflict, you will have conflicts in this life. It's a reality of living in a broken world. And you could respond in unhealthy ways or healthy ways. My encouragement to you is to commit to making peace. Why are the peacemakers blessed? The peacemakers are blessed because they are the people who stand out as being different from the rest of the world. The world is hungry for peace, and it's our job as Christians to be examples of what it looks like to make peace when our brother or sister wrongs us, to do peacemaking the Jesus way. And when we focus on God and trust in His strength in the face of conflict resolution, we see what it means to be a child of God. Because as Paul says in Ephesians 4:32, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. Making peace, forgiving offenses is one of the ways that we demonstrate the gospel in a broken world. And so when people wrong you, you have a choice. Will you be a peacemaker or a peacemaker? Will you do things the Jesus way, or will you do things the way of the world? Because Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Let's make peace.